Hey everybody, Art13131 here, and we're in week 9 now. And we're going to do ink techniques this time. So, I want to show you a couple of pens you could get. Um, Essentially, it's like a Sharpie, not a ballpoint pen when you're working with ink techniques. If you're going to use a pen and not an actual ink pen, where you dip it into a well of ink. Well, these ink pens, I'll show you. This is the one I use. It's like a Sharpie, but I think they're a little better, but they're certainly not a lot more expensive necessarily. But I mean, you could order these, and I'll give you time to finish these. But if you can find something like this at Walmart or another store, and art stores may carry a better pen than a Sharpie, but you want the tip that is going to render ink, not like a ballpoint pen, because when you do stippling, which is like little dots to shade with, you want the ink to come out of the pen without having to uh, draw a line or a dash or something. That's usually ballpoint pens. You have to move the ball on the top of the pen to get the ink out, as opposed to you can just tap this on paper to make little dots to shade with. It's called stippling, and uh, and these work really well that way. So you can get one of these or just use a Sharpie, but I would say point 0.8 would be a good size. Anything thinner than that's going to be real hard to shade with because it makes really thin, small marks as opposed to sort of a medium-sized mark. But thicker ones are going to get too thick, and they're going to glop up things and not give you quite the smooth shading technique out of a pen that you actually want to achieve. So you want around point 0.8 here. So look for those. Okay, let's go back here. So number 23 is ink techniques. I'll show you what that means. Then we're going to do number 24 in the middle of the week, which is an ink drawing. So you're actually going to practice the ink techniques first, and then you're going to do the ink drawing, and then you're going to do an ink drawing showing the lisps. And I'll talk about that on Wednesday, both of those, 24 and 25. So just concern yourself with number 23 right now, the ink techniques. Now, I suggest doing five of or more if you want, but at least five of the techniques. So I use egg shapes or ball shapes because they're rounded and you can show the idea is to show light source and shape of what you're drawing with the marks you're making. You can't make like graphite smooth shading. You have to use ink marks to emphasize where the light is hitting and where the light tones are and where the darker tones are where the light isn't hitting. You do that by using less marks or more marks together. As you can see in these egg shapes, that the scribble uh, shading technique over here, there's very few scribbles at the top where the light is hitting. Then they increase a little bit more in the middle for a midtone. And then right around the middle where the light isn't hitting, so the light's hitting from the well, maybe right in directly, but more on the right side of the top. Well, the middle area is really congested. There's lots of marks together. Scribble, 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 scribble. And that's going to darken that area up in tone. Then at the bottom you have the reflective light off the table, which is giving it a lesser tone, kind of in a mid-tone, but maybe a little more than that. But I see white paper through there because you didn't put as many marks together. So it depends on how many marks together you actually put where it's going to get darker. And where you put them least amount of marks together, it gets lighter because you're letting the white paper show through to make the light tone with your mark. I hope that makes sense. Now you look at the stippling, and that is making little dots. So you're just tapping the pin down, the tip of the pin down to make little dots everywhere. Well, at the top, very top, there's none because that's the very lightest area. Then you start seeing a little bit of marks right here. Boom, 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 little, just very sparsely. Then it increases about right here to more marks. Then in here, more and more marks. You want to make it so it's a gradual transition, just like graphite, from light to darker tones to darker tones to the darkest tones, and then back to the lightest tones. You don't want anything to look sudden, like it's suddenly changed. Okay? Now, some of these are not done very well, like this one and this one. In my opinion, they kind of suddenly change in the middle, which isn't really accurate. They could have used a little less marks right in here and right in here in the top to have a gradual transition from the light to the little bit darker, a little bit darker, a little bit darker, and then into this darker area. Same with this one. And that's the way they did it with the scribble, the stippling, these marks, I forget what those are called, but it's kind of like 3 marks in different directions every time. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and they kind of make a cool kind of pattern when you put them closer and closer together, they get darker. When you put them a little further away from each other, they get lighter. And this one and this one, and even this one have a little bit of that mid-tone as opposed to just suddenly changing like these two. So try not to do it like these two. So this is stippling. I forget what this is called, but it's a cool technique. Um, this is contour hatching. So is this. But this is like using smaller lines, little dashes. And there's little dashes at the top, but not very many. And then they get more congested as they get down into the middle area. That's giving that dark tone. Then down in here, they get less and less. They decrease in marks. Less and less, so you can show the roundness of the egg where the cast shadow, the light from the table reflecting off the table is actually showing on the bottom of the egg, which is a reality that will happen. All these eggs are like that. These ones not too successful in my opinion because they suddenly change into the middle tone rather than gradually changing. Now this is a good one too. This is another contour hatching, but it's using the egg shape going around from left to right as opposed to from top to bottom on this one. See the top to bottom lines kind of going in that direction with the contour of the egg. They're all kind of curving. That's giving you shape in the egg. Okay, same with this one, but they're longer lines. But there's more lines together in the middle that is giving it that darker tone. Same with this one, except for they're going from left to right, around the side in a horizontal kind of way, but it's still with the curve of the egg. You see that? The curve of the egg, giving it the shape of the egg. This one's doing that curve of the egg. That one's doing the curve of the egg. This one's kind of going straight across, which I don't think is as successful in making a shape of the egg. So really the best ones in here are the scribble one, the stippling, the contour hatching. And if you were to use the cross hatching, is what this is, but continued with a few more marks down in this area, it would be successful. Now I'll show you some other marks on other subject matter that where cross-hatching really works well. But right now I want to show you another subject you could use. You could use balls instead of eggs. Oops. Oh, there we go. Let's see if I can drag that up. All right. So this is cross-hatching, where they kind of cross each other everywhere. Boom, boom, boom. Maybe you're picking 3 or 4 different directions. But where the lightest area is, you're not using as many of those lines. Maybe just 2 directions. And they're not very close together, they're further away. It's not as congested, meaning there are not as many marks in the one place. That's going to let the white paper show through and show you a lighter tone. Where you start using more and more marks, it gets into the mid-tone. Where you start using a lot of marks together, boom, 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 even into where it's totally black, that's getting into the darker tone. So you're showing the roundness of the ball because of the way the light is hitting the top area, and not so much around the middle, and much less on the bottom. These aren't showing a reflected light off the table as much as the eggs, but I still think it's okay. It kind of messes with your cast shadow when you leave it light or darker, too dark down here, because then they blend too much. They don't separate as much from the bottom of the ball to the cast shadow. You want a cast shadow on the bottom, so place it on a table. Place it on a surface with a cast shadow. Same with the egg shapes. They have a cast shadow on the bottom. Whoops. So you want to do that. Going back to the balls, this is the stippling. Less stippling where you want your light source to show on the ball. More and more where it gets into the midtones, and then many stipplings together is going to start making it darker and darker and darker and darker down where the light is not hitting. There's the scribble. Less scribble at the top, maybe very little like the eggs had. Or you can use this technique where there's a little more, but very light. So you let in that white paper come through. Then more for the midtones. Then a lot more together where you want the darker tone. Okay. I'm not sure. I think this is more like sort of a smudging technique with ink. Let's not do that. Let's stay with the lines, okay? But I actually think some of these are better, like the scribble, the stipple, and the contour lines over here, the 1, 2, 3. Those are very successful in showing a lot of shape of the egg being rounded. You're working with your light source. You're shading with attention to your light source. What direction is that light source coming from? These little diagrams here are showing you what kind of marks you're making. But these are kind of curved marks, but they're very short, like little dashes together, going in a certain direction around the egg to show its shape. These are longer, see? But they're congested where you want the dark, okay? And this is what I want you to do. So pick 5 of these. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would be very good. If you want to try this one, go ahead. It's pretty cool, but it's kind of intricate. But try it. It's like 3 marks together and they change direction all the time. So that never a mark that meets another mark is in the same direction. It's always changed. Like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, different direction, 1, 2, 3 in a different direction here, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 in a different direction there, 1, 2, 3 in a different direction, and then another one here connecting those two, but it's a different direction. That's what makes that happen. Okay? So try 4 or more of these on one page using the same egg shape or ball shape. I prefer the egg shape, kind of cool. And that will be your practice, to practice up using ink techniques to show the shape of your subject and your light source. That's the goal. All right. And then we're going to talk about the ink drawing, and I'll show you many more, but you can go onto Bing yourself and all these will be there. I just put ink techniques and stuff, but you can see how they work with other subject matter. Okay, here's another diagram of shading. So the stippling starting very light here, more, a little more, and then more and more and more and more and more till it's very dark down here. This is the hatching. So hatching and cross hatching are a little different because cross hatching is crossing each other. Hatching is just in one direction. Now you can do contour hatching that goes with the contour of your shape of the egg. I showed you that. But this is just straight across. So less up here, a little more, midtones, more, very dark tones. Same with the cross hatching. Same with the scribbling. And whatever this is, I can't read it. Oh, that's the dry brush. Don't try that. Let's stay with these. Just with the pen. This is with a brush, okay? And you can go through here and just see endless amounts of ink techniques. And get your head around how you're going to do your drawing, but you don't need to do that yet, okay? That's a cool drawing of apple with very light area here because there's not very many marks, but they're using the contour hatching and lines going down and across to show the shape of this round apple. They're not straight lines, okay? The straight line technique doesn't work as well as the contour. I think the contour gives a lot more shape, okay? So you can look at those. You can go to Google and put that in there too, and start studying ink marks. But I want you to start. This is this assignment here, number 23, right? 23. Yeah. This is the assignment is to try 5 or more of these, 5 or more of these, and try each technique to show the shape, getting lighter and darker with your marks, and that's the goal. Okay. All right. And then on Wednesday, we'll talk about ink drawing and the ink drawing showing ellipses, which is going to be like a still life with containers that are rounded on a table, kind of like the kitchen item one, but we're going to use pen to, and we're going to show ellipses, which are the oval shapes at the bottom and the top of containers that are rounded when you're looking at them at a slight angle. Okay, and we'll talk all about that later. All right.